One July morning, a young mother and her toddler vanished from the heart of the Rockies, and for 6 years, not a single clue surfaced. The forest swallowed every trace. But evil, it turns out, doesn't always stay buried. Sarah Brennan wasn't a reckless hiker. She was the opposite. She planned for everything. Her backpack always held extra snacks, water, and a first aid kit. She was the kind of mother who saw both adventure and danger in equal measure, marveling at wildflowers, but never stepping off the marked trail. Teaching Ethan, her 2-year-old, to count marmots, but always holding his hand near the water. The mountains were a gift and a warning, and Sarah respected both. July 15th dawned warm and cloudless. Perfect hiking weather. Mark Brennan, Sarah's husband, woke before sunrise with a fever. He tried to convince her to stay, but Sarah's spirit was undimmed. "We'll just do the easy loop. I'll be back by lunch," she promised, leaving a sticky note on the counter. "Love you. See you soon." Her SUV pulled away, Ethan waving to the back window, his face lit with excitement. By 9 a.m., Sarah's familiar handwriting was logged in the Cascade Trail Register. Sarah B. plus Ethan, 8:47 a.m., morning glory pool. The trail was alive with summer. Ribbons of sunlight pierced the pines, wildflowers spilled across open meadows, and the air smelled of earth and distant thunder. Sarah paused at the trailhead, adjusting Ethan's tiny pack, double-checking the water bottles. She snapped a photo from Mark, a tradition, Ethan grinning beneath a sun hat. Morning glory pool shimmered in the distance. Sarah had written about its beauty and danger in her blog. The spring scalding waters looked harmless, but she knew the truth. She'd warned readers. This pool takes lives every year. Stay back. Stay smart. Ethan was fascinated by the bubbled water, always asking for stories about the colors. Gold from iron, green from algae, blue from minerals. But Sarah never let him close. After that entry in the register, the world simply tilted. Noon passed, and 1 p.m., and Mark's unease deepened. Sarah always texted after hikes. When her phone rang to voicemail, dread crept in. He drove to the trailhead, expecting a flat tire, maybe a scraped knee. Instead, he found her car in its usual spot, her wallet and keys inside, but no Sarah, no Ethan. The parking lot was busy, laughter echoing across the lot, but nobody had seen them. He flagged down a ranger, panic barely controlled. Within hours, search teams were on the move. Uniformed staff, volunteers, search dogs. They fanned out across every marked path, calling names, shaking brush, peering into shadows where light could not reach. Helicopters swept low as dusk gathered, their spotlights raking the tree line, searching for a sign. That first night, Mark refused to leave the lot. Other hikers brought him coffee and blankets, murmuring, "They'll turn up, maybe took the wrong trail, sheltered from the sun, just got turned around." But Mark's hope felt brittle. Sarah didn't get lost. She didn't make mistakes, not in the wild. The next day, the search escalated. Dogs traced Sarah sent down the Cascade Trail, following the familiar perfume of sunscreen and the sharp tang of Ethan's favorite plastic truck. The trail ended near Morning Glory Pool, just as Sarah had planned. Divers were brought in, their equipment fogging in the cool mountain air. They searched the spring's edge, but the bottom was too deep, too hot, and the ground unstable, a graveyard for the careless. A single adult footprint, perfectly preserved in dust near the water's rim, was the last tangible clue. No discarded sippy cup, no torn clothing, not even a crumpled granola bar wrapper. The pool's vibrant surface hid everything. To the searchers, it felt as if the mountain itself had decided to keep it secret. Days stretched into weeks. The case went national. News crews descended, speculating on accidents, wild animals, foul play. Some blamed a rogue mountain lion. Others whispered drifters. Strangers in pickup trucks spotted near the lot. One tip claimed a woman and child matching Sarah and Ethan were seen at a lookout miles away. But it proved false. Mark haunted the ranger station, interrogating anyone who'd been on the trail, begging staff to check their logbooks again. Sarah's friends took up the search. Posters went up at every gas station, every coffee shop for miles. Bring Sarah and Ethan home, the flyers read, over a photo of mother and son smiling at a picnic. Social media campaigns trended for a week, then faded. Summer ended. Snow covered the trail, hiding any secrets left behind. The official search was called off by October. Mark returned every July, tracing the same steps. He left notes beneath rocks. "We're still looking. I'll never stop." He mapped every possible route Sarah could have taken, cross-referenced every call, message, and report. But every effort led back to Morning Glory Pool, a beautiful, lethal silence. 6 years passed. Mark kept Sarah's and Ethan's rooms untouched, the house filled with their laughter frozen in time. He refused to hold a memorial, refusing to surrender to the ache of not knowing. In those years, his life narrowed to routine and obsession, working, researching, waiting for the phone to ring. And then, on the 6th anniversary, as Mark was packing for another lonely pilgrimage to Colorado, the phone did ring. The number was Colorado unknown. A female voice, measured, urgent, cut through his disbelief. "Mr. Brennan, this is Detective Patricia Chun with the Park County Sheriff's Office. I need to speak with you about your wife and son's case." His heart stopped. "Did you find them?" "I'd prefer to speak in person. We've made a discovery that requires your immediate attention." Mark barely heard her as he booked his flight, called his boss, packed with shaking hands. The drive to the airport was a blur, memories chasing him. Ethan's little boots, Sarah's smile, the blue shimmer of Morning Glory Pool. He replayed their last day together, her careful plans, the promise to be back by lunch. Jim met him at the airport, her demeanor grave. The research team at Morning Glory Pool found metallic anomalies, evidence deep in the spring. We recovered personal items, a pack frame, remnants of hiking boots, fabric. Most distinct, her wedding ring. At the site, the spring shimmered, beautiful and cruel. Evidence bags filled the tent. Sarah's boots, a fragment of purple fleece, the familiar glint of her ring. The forensic team explained how the spring's high temperature and minerals altered everything, preserved some items, erased others. But no sign of Ethan, Chin said softly. No child's boots, no snacks, no clothes. Nothing. Mark stared into the abyss, the spring's surface a mirror for his grief. Was Ethan with Sarah, lost forever to the water? Or had something or someone taken him away before tragedy struck? As the sun faded behind peaks, Mark faced a truth. The forest had finally revealed a piece of its secret. But what it kept hidden was even darker, a mystery only beginning to crack open. For most, the Rockies were a place of wonder, trails that sparkled with wildflowers in the morning and sang with coyotes at dusk. But for Mark Brennan, they had become something closer to a living nightmare. On the drive from the airport to the Cascade Trail, Detective Patricia Chin briefed him quietly. The team that found Sarah's remains were geothermal researchers, not law enforcement. They followed protocol, stopped everything, and called us right away. That's why this discovery is different from all the false alarms before. It's as close to untouched evidence as we'll ever get. Mark barely heard her. His mind replayed old memories, Sarah's steady laugh, Ethan's hand in his, the last text she'd ever sent. The landscape blurred by, mountains looming with the indifference of ancient gods. At the trailhead, rangers nodded in solemn recognition. News had spread quickly, but details were few. Everyone wondered, could this finally be closure, or just another layer of horror? Morning Glory Pool looked unchanged, radiant, and deadly. Around it, yellow tape and temporary shelters marked an active crime scene. Researchers in waterproof gear conferred with police and forensic specialists. Chun led Mark past clusters of equipment to a tent where artifacts were displayed for identification. She spoke softly. We found fabric consistent with hiking gear, a corroded backpack frame, Sarah's boots, one almost whole, the other stripped to its metal grommets, her wedding ring, engraved as you described. Mark forced himself to examine each item. He confirmed the boots, the water bottle, the GPS watch. He picked up the bag with the titanium ring and saw the words he'd chosen for her. To the summit and back, still etched on the inside, somehow untouched by time or elements. The proof was overwhelming. Sarah had not wandered from the trail. She'd come here, with her gear, and had disappeared into the very pool she'd warned others about. But not everything made sense. "There's nothing of Ethan's," Mark whispered, voice raw. "Not a single thing." Chin nodded. "The research team's core samples show metal objects at depth. Some are unidentified. Could be more gear or something else entirely. But nothing that matches what a child would carry. We'll keep looking." The forensics officer, Dr. Emily Reeves, described the science with a kind of awe and dread. Morning Glory Pool is a natural vault. The heat, the acidity, the minerals, they break down organic matter quickly, but metals and some fabrics can survive. Still, the spring circulates and deposits things unpredictably. It's taken years for these items to move to where we could find them. Mark felt caught between relief and agony. Sarah's fate was finally known, but Ethan was still out there. Somewhere in the timeline between the trailhead and the pool, he had vanished. The scenario painted itself in Mark's mind. Sarah carrying Ethan, something or someone causing them to separate. Only her making it to the pool, only her belongings found. The terror of not knowing hollowed him out. Detective Chun turned the conversation practical. "We need to revisit every piece of the original investigation. Trail registers, logbooks, maintenance logs, weather reports. Now that we have a confirmed location and date, new questions emerge. For instance, if Sarah fell or slipped, why did she have all her gear? Why did nothing surface sooner? And what about the weather that day?" Ranger Tom Mitchell, a weathered veteran of the park, joined them. "I was here that week. Did routine maintenance on the shelters up the ridge. Timber Creek, Pine Ridge, Avalanche Creek. That day, July 15th, I remember a storm blowing in mid-afternoon. Not enough to close trails, but enough for hikers to take shelter." Mark latched onto the detail. Sarah would have known to seek cover if the weather turned. "Was anyone in the cabins? Did you check logbooks?" Mitchell shook his head. "The cabins were checked for occupancy, but I don't think anyone went over the logbooks closely. There were dozens of entries. Back then, we didn't have digital records." Detective Chen's eyes narrowed. "Where are those books now?" "In storage at the ranger station. I kept them. Thought they might be useful someday." As Mark and Chen followed Mitchell to the station, a new layer of hope crept in. If Sarah had made it to a shelter, if she'd logged her route or left a note, maybe, just maybe, there was a lead to Ethan's fate. At the ranger station, the logbooks emerged, dusty, handwritten, thick with years of signatures, notes, even sketches from school groups. It was tedious work. Page after page, names, dates, weather complaints. Then, an entry in Sarah's handwriting leapt off the page. SB plus EB taking shelter from rain. 11:10 a.m. We'll wait it out before heading back. The entry was dated the very day she vanished. Mark's heart hammered. She made it to a shelter. She waited out the storm. Chen's pen flew across her notepad. Which shelter? Mitchell read the cabin code. Avalanche Creek. It's the most remote of the three, barely used except in bad weather. Mark's mind raced. Avalanche Creek Shelter was over a mile from the hot spring, off the main loop. For Sarah to reach Morning Glory Pool after that meant she'd either double back or something had forced her off the safe route. Chun turned to Mitchell. "Were there any reports of other hikers at Avalanche Creek that day?" Mitchell frowned, thinking, "Nothing stands out, but I'll check maintenance logs. I do recall a seasonal worker, Jake Morrison, who was doing repairs that week." Jake Morrison. The name meant nothing to Mark. Chun requested his employment record and started digging. "We need to know if anyone else was at the shelter. Anyone Sarah and Ethan might have encountered." As Mark and Chun pored over the records, unease grew. Morrison's log entry for July 15th read, "Routine repairs at Avalanche Creek Shelter. Left tools in the bin. Weather turned. Left for main station around noon. Nothing suspicious, at first glance. But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that the smallest detail could matter. Sarah, always careful, always prepared. Yet, after sheltering from the rain, she had ended up alone. Her remains hidden in a pool she'd always avoided, her son vanished. That night, Mark lay in his hotel room, unable to sleep. He replayed every minute of the day Sarah and Ethan disappeared. He imagined the shelter, the storm, the sudden decisions that had led his family down different paths. Did Sarah leave the shelter alone, chasing after Ethan if he wandered? Did someone lure her away? Outside, the Rockies slept under a velvet sky, indifferent to the suffering they'd hosted. In the silence, Mark realized the mountain had given up one secret. But the greater mystery, what happened to his son, remained a ghost haunting the timberline. Detective Chin called as dawn crept over the horizon. "Mr. Brennan, we're organizing new searches, focused on the shelters and surrounding woods. We're also bringing in a profiler. I know it's not the miracle you hoped for, but this is real progress." Mark's hope flickered. Painful, necessary, a single light in the vast, cold dark. The mountain had spoken, but its story was far from over. The sun rose over the Rockies with a deceptive warmth, light golden on snow-capped peaks, a gentle breeze swaying pine branches. For Mark Brennan, it was another sleepless night in a hotel room haunted by memory and dread. By morning, the Cascade Trail parking lot had transformed into a temporary command center. Yellow tape, crime scene vans, tents bristling with radios and screens. A full-scale operation was underway, drawing resources from across Colorado. Detective Chun was already at the map table when Mark arrived, her face drawn with fatigue and determination. "We've divided the trail system into search grids," she explained. "You'll join the team heading toward Avalanche Creek Shelter. We're running fresh interviews with every ranger, seasonal worker, and regular hiker we can find from the 2019 logs." She paused, voice softening. "If it's too much..." Mark shook his head. "I need to see it for myself." The hike to Avalanche Creek Shelter was longer than Mark remembered. Steep, the air thin, his legs heavy from exhaustion and years of grief. Ranger Tom Mitchell led the way, describing each twist in the trail, every landmark. "Sarah was one of the most responsible hikers I knew," Mitchell offered quietly. "Always signed a register, always left cabins cleaner than she found them." Mark's throat tightened. The shelter itself sat in a small clearing. Rough-hewn logs, metal roof, a single wood stove, bunks built for a few desperate souls on a stormy night. Inside, the CSI team moved with practiced care. Every surface was dusted for prints, every scrap of trash or forgotten gear examined, every inch photographed. The logbook sat on a folding table, its weathered pages fluttering in the breeze. "Sarah's entry is here," a technician confirmed, "but after that, just a gap. Next entry is 2 days later." Nothing else. Mark sat on one of the bunks, picturing Sarah and Ethan huddled from the rain. What had happened when the storm passed? Why had they left the safety of the shelter? A ranger's voice cut through his thoughts. "Mr. Brennan, you should see this." In the brush just 50 yards from the shelter, searchers had uncovered something unusual. A weathered child's sippy cup, half buried in the dirt, faded by 6 years of sun and snow. The name, Ethan, was still visible in marker on the bottom. Mark's knees buckled as he knelt in the dirt. The cup was confirmation. Proof Ethan had been here alive before everything went wrong. Detective Chin arrived, examining the cup in its evidence bag. "It looks like it was dropped, maybe lost in the rush to leave the shelter. It's our first sign of Ethan in all these years." That single item sent shockwaves through the team. Searchers fanned out in a widening circle, eyes scanning for more. A child's shoelace caught in the undergrowth. A torn scrap of map. A child's drawing on the back. Ethan's blocky handwriting labeling stick figure hikers. But the evidence also raised dark questions. If Ethan left behind his belongings near the shelter, why were Sarah's remains found at Morning Glory Pool more than a mile away? Did something, or someone, separate mother and son after they left the cabin? Chen's phone buzzed. Another update. "We found something in the ranger station storage. A metal locker, long forgotten, hasn't been opened in years." There's a jewelry box with Sarah's initials. Mark's pulse spiked. Sarah never hiked with jewelry, except her wedding ring. Chin nodded, eyes dark. This is different. It's a delicate silver necklace with a compass charm. Your anniversary gift, right? Mark nodded numbly. She always wore it under her shirt. A team of officers and Chin escorted Mark to the ranger station. The locker was open, evidence bags stacked neatly on a table. The necklace, a white gold wedding band. Even a pair of Sarah's distinctive hiking socks. Personal items she never left behind. How did these end up in a ranger locker? Chin wondered aloud. Ranger Mitchell hovered nearby, brow furrowed. I don't know. Those lockers get reassigned. Sometimes gear is found and stored until claimed. Could have been overlooked for years. But Mark caught something in the ranger's tone, a flicker of uncertainty, or was it fear? The detective turned to Mark. These are trophies, Mark. Whoever put them here kept them hidden. This was an accident. As night fell, suspicion deepened. Jake Morrison, the former seasonal worker, was still unaccounted for. He'd left the park abruptly at the end of 2019, no forwarding address, no new job on record. But was he a predator or another red herring? The next morning, the investigation shifted focus. Chin and Mark reviewed every name connected to the shelter that day. Something gnawed at Mark. Mitchell had been so helpful, so ready with details. But was it just experience, or was he steering the investigation? A team searched the seasonal staff quarters. In an unassigned closet, a faded backpack was found, child-sized, with a patch Ethan's grandmother had sewn on for him. Inside, a crumpled snack wrapper, a broken toy car, a photograph, Ethan, Sarah, and Mark, smiling on a picnic blanket. The date on the back, July 8th, 1 week before they vanished. Someone took this after they disappeared, Chin murmured. Someone kept it. The team expanded their search to maintenance records, shift logs, anything that might connect park employees to the evidence. Late that afternoon, an alert went up. Mark's phone buzzed with a chilling message. We have reason to believe a person of interest is still in the area. Please remain at the station for your safety. A knot of dread tightened in Mark's chest. The mountain had begun to reveal its secrets, but the truth, the awful, final truth, remained elusive. Someone in these woods knew what had happened to Sarah and Ethan. Someone had kept the story alive for 6 years, hiding trophies in plain sight. That night, Mark stared to the ranger station window, at the darkened forest, heart pounding. Somewhere in the trees, the evidence nobody saw was waiting for the final piece to fall into place. The air in the ranger station was electric. Hope, fear, and suspicion circling every conversation. Mark Brennan felt it in every whispered update, every glance between detectives. Something was unraveling. Evidence was surfacing. But so were old alliances and unspoken rivalries among the staff who'd spent their lives protecting these mountains. Outside, the search teams pressed on, scouring the woods, the cabins, the deep ravines near Avalanche Creek Shelter. Detective Chin was tireless. She reviewed logbooks, pieced together timelines, and compared every name on maintenance rosters with a new list of evidence. The park's daily routine had become a police procedural. Staff interviews, forensic sweeps, and sleepless nights. Mark watched Chin at work, marveling at her focus. She seemed to be everywhere at once. One moment coordinating search dogs, the next examining the faint outline of a boot print, then poring over records by lamplight. Mid-morning, a searcher arrived from the staff quarters, breathless. Found something in the old staff cabin, he said, in his hands. A faded notebook, its pages warped with age. Chin opened it carefully. Inside were weather notes, schedules, and diary entries. Some were mundane, bare sightings, trail repairs. But then a chilling entry, dated the day after Sarah and Ethan vanished. Shelter search complete. No trace. Mother and child presumed lost of Springs. Inventory checked. Kept compass, necklace, and ring. Too personal to discard. Sometimes a mountain keeps its own secrets. The handwriting was familiar, Ranger Tom Mitchell's. Mark's stomach twisted. Chen's eyes locked with his. It's not a confession, but it's more than a field note. As the team gathered in a side office, The mood shifted from methodical to tense. Mitchell was summoned. He arrived, weathered and stoic as ever, but Chen's questions were sharper now. Ranger Mitchell, you logged maintenance at Avalanche Creek the morning Sarah and Ethan disappeared. Chen began. Your own records show you were first to check the shelter after the storm. You found personal effects. Mitchell's face was unreadable. Yes, it's routine to clear out lost items. Jewelry's usually turned in, but sometimes, well, you know how it is. This case got to all of us. Chen pressed. Why did you keep the compass and ring? Mitchell looked down. I don't know. Maybe I thought, maybe I'd find a way to return them. Or maybe I just couldn't let them go. But something about his calm rattled Mark. The details, the knowledge, the memory for dates felt too precise, too rehearsed. A CSI technician knocked, holding another piece of the puzzle. Found something odd at Morning Glory Pool, deep in the roots along the bank. Old fabric, wrapped around a heavy stone. Traces of hair not Sarah's. And something else. She produced a tiny shoe, child-size, faded by years and the elements. Mark's breath caught. Ethan's, he whispered. He could see the dinosaur print, warm but distinct. The team exchanged grim looks. Whatever had happened that day, Ethan hadn't simply wandered off. Someone had tried to make sure nothing would ever be found. As the evidence mounted, Mitchell's story began to crumble. Chen leaned in, voice low but relentless. You knew the springs better than anyone. You led every search. You logged evidence, then kept it hidden. Why? Mitchell hesitated. You don't know what it's like living with a secret that big. I was the last one to see them alive. Sarah came to the shelter. Just as the storm hit, Ethan was tired, fussy. She planned to wait out. But I had another maintenance run. I offered to walk them back, but she said they'd stay. When I returned hours later, they were gone. I searched. I left the notes. I found her ring in the mud by the pool. I didn't know what to do. Chen's eyes narrowed. But you didn't report any of this at the time. Mitchell was silent. In the hush, the sound of the wind outside seemed louder. I thought it was my fault, that I'd failed, that if I'd insisted, maybe... The mood was grim, but Chen was undeterred. Why hide the jewelry? Why keep the necklace? Mitchell's voice shook for the first time. I guess I just couldn't face the family. Couldn't admit I was the last to see them alive. The guilt, it eats at you. A long pause. Finally, Mark spoke, voice rough. Did you see anyone else near the shelter that day? Another hiker, a worker, anyone? Mitchell shook his head, but a flicker of something, a memory or a lie, passed over his face. The rest of the day was a blur. Detectives cross-checking every possible name, interviews with old staffers, a background check that pulled up something new. Jake Morrison, the seasonal worker who'd left suddenly, had been arrested in Utah for a minor theft 3 years earlier. A current address was found. Chen sent officers out immediately. Evening fell, and with it, a storm, cold rain hammering the ranger station roof. Mark stood at the window, watching the dark woods. He felt closer to Sarah and Ethan than he had in years, but also further than ever from the answers he needed. At midnight, the phone rang. We found Morrison, Chen announced. He's alive, cooperative, and his alibi is ironclad. He was never near Avalanche Creek that day. It all comes back to the mountain and the people who know it best. As thunder echoed through the mountains, Mark realized the forest still held its final secret. The ranger's guilt was real, but was it the guilt of a man who failed to save, or the guilt of a man who knew more than he'd ever admit? The answer waited in the trees, shivering in the storm, almost within reach. Night clung to the Rockies, and the storm's rage spent itself on the tin roof of the ranger station. Detective Chen barely slept. Mark Brennan sat in a plastic chair by the window, staring into darkness broken only by the slow, pulsing flash of police lights in the lot outside. Every so often, the wood seemed to breathe. Branches creaked, shadows shifted, the memory of Sarah and Ethan pressing in from every side. Morning brought a heavy stillness. In the early haze, an officer entered the room, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Found this tucked under the bunks in the Avalanche Creek shelter, he said quietly. Must have slipped through the cracks before. Inside, a child's blue mitten, weathered but unmistakable. Mark's hands trembled as he touched the bag. Sarah had knitted those mittens the winter before they vanished. The circle was closing. Detective Chin worked with grim precision. She reconstructed every timeline. Who'd been where? Who could have crossed paths with Sarah and Ethan? Forensics finished cataloging the last of the items from the pool and the shelter, confirming that, yes, Ethan's possessions had been scattered, not lost by chance. There was intent, placement, not mere accident. The question was, whose intent? Then, a break. Analysis of the necklace and ring revealed partial prints. Not Sarah's, not Mark's, not Morrison's. The prints matched Ranger Tom Mitchell. Suddenly, every small detail became weighted. His knowledge of the search routes, his keeping of the logbooks, his constant presence in the investigation. Guilt was not just survivor's regret. Guilt had a fingerprint. Detective Chun called Mitchell in under pretense. Mark waited in a side room, every muscle coiled tight. The interview started calm. Chun, unblinking, laid out the evidence. The jewelry, the notebook, the prints. Mitchell tried to explain, his voice faltering. I just wanted to spare the family the pain. I thought if I held on to those things, maybe... But Chin pressed. Tom, the logs say you checked the shelter hours before Sarah's last entry. Yet the items you claim to have found after, the necklace, the ring, the backpack, were logged days apart. Some never reported at all. Mitchell's face crumbled, the mask of years dissolving. It was a storm. She was scared. Ethan was tired. I offered to guide them back, but she wanted to wait. I left. When I came back, Sarah was gone. Ethan's things scattered outside. There were footprints, more than one set. Someone else was there. I tried to follow, but the storm, I didn't call it in. I should have. I should have done more. He described finding Sarah's wedding ring by the pool's edge, the necklace caught in roots, Ethan's cup and mitten on the path. The scattered evidence was a map of panic. Sarah, possibly fleeing. Ethan dropped, picked up, lost. But Mitchell, consumed by shame at his own failures, chose silence over confession. I kept it all because I couldn't face what I knew, he whispered. That I left them alone in the storm. That I'd let them down. Chun, voice steely. You didn't kill them, Tom. But you let the truth rot. And you let Mark believe the worst for years. Mitchell broke. Tears ran down his cheeks, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, Mark. I am so sorry. But there was still a question. If another set of prints, another presence, was there that day, who was it? And why was no one ever found? No body, no answers, only fragments left behind. Forensics re-examined everything. A single, partial boot print in the mud near Morning Glory Pool, size for a large man. A partial DNA profile on Ethan's mitten. Not a match for any employee or known hiker. But in the national database, a hit, a transit with a record of thefts in nearby counties. A man who'd vanished from the area days after Sarah and Ethan. The truth was a bitter gift. Sarah had trusted the mountains and their guardians. But on that day, another predator wandered the woods. A chance encounter, a perfect storm, the chaos of weather and fear. The transit was never found. Sarah's fate, sealed in a moment of panic and a decision to flee rather than trust the wrong stranger. Ethan's remains never surfaced, but the evidence of his last moments, mitten, cup, shoelace, spoke to a desperate mother's fight and a child's innocent terror. As the news broke, the mountain community mourned anew. The myth of safety was gone. Rangers rebuilt the trails, but Mark knew every stone, every shadow, every echo of laughter or sob was now a scar. At a memorial, Mark spoke. Sarah and Ethan deserved the truth. We lost them to the silence of these woods, and to the silence of those who failed to act. If this case teaches us anything, it's that you never stop looking, never stop telling the story, never let fear or shame bury the truth. Years later, hikers still pause at the Avalanche Creek shelter, reading the plaque installed in Sarah and Ethan's memory. The mountain keeps its secrets, but some now have names. And when the wind shifts through the pines, those who listen close say you can still hear a child's laughter, a mother's soothing voice, and the stubborn echo of family's love, never quite silenced, no matter how deep the shadows grow.